Are you indivisible? Are you lonely? Don't you wish the world was simple again? Follow the pregnant virgin and join us because the Legion After Show starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Legion After Show. And much like the season 3 premiere of Legion, you tune in and you look and you go, who the hell are these people? This isn't the cast of the show. Welcome. I'm Christian Blatt. Perhaps you remember me from multiple fill-in stints during season 2 and the dozens of Marvel-related shows that I do. But we have an amazing panel. 2 out of 3 of my co-hosts are here tonight, starting with Alexa. Say hello.
Hi, my name is Alexa Cappiello. I'm so excited to be here and definitely love all things Marvel, so this is going to be great.
And Jeff, say hello to the people.
What up? And if you guys don't know yet, I'm new here, but I'm on multiple shows, do all that, and some other shows, so you'll start seeing me around.
I mean, the fact that you do all that right there,
Yeah,
we don't need any more credibility.
Automatically
this
cool.
guy's the real deal. So, for some of you might have seen, we did a quick little video last night just kind of letting people know who we are and how we found the show. So if you haven't seen that and you do want to know it's a little better, you can go ahead and check it out. There's so much to talk about in this episode. The 3 of us watched it together, and let me just say first, I needed that first commercial break, and it didn't come for 18 minutes. And I just needed to pause. I didn't want to actually stop the show because I wasn't watching it by myself. I just needed to catch my breath a little bit because there was so much happening. Alexa, what did you just overall thoughts of the beginning? We're only talking the beginning of the episode.
That's fine.
That first sequence, all of it. What did you think as we were watching it?
Am I on acid? that's what I thought. Like it was like an acid trip, and then it felt like a music video. And I was like, who is this new character? I mean, I did a little bit of research, so I knew a little bit going in. But at the same time, I was like, okay, so when are we going to see David? Where is he? And then his reveal was pretty cool.
There was a part of me that wondered, are we going to not see him this week?
Is he just not going to be in the episode?
Because that would be a fascinating way to kick off the season. Are we going to not see any of our characters?
The visuals, though, were stunning, and that's just, the whole show is like that.
If you didn't know from the visuals, you would have thought it was a totally different show.
Yeah.
Like, we talked about this before. You don't really see any of the main characters until, 15, 20 minutes into the show?
Yeah, it's about 20 minutes into the episode, which is insane.
It was crazy.
But it was also fascinating. Like, you couldn't look away.
No.
And one of the things that I always say about the show, it's like, personally, I think that anything you watch on TV, why don't you just actually commit to it and pay attention and watch it? But if there was ever a show that you can't text while you're watching it, you can't follow up but don't try and watch it while you do the dishes. You have to sit and watch this show, and even if you do, you're like, I still feel like I'm missing something,
It's just as cerebral as Legion is as a character, you know what I mean? And so it's hard. It's hard to. That's why this show is so polarizing. You got people who love it and people who are like, "What? I don't get it." But the people who do get it, I mean, I think they're my people. I like them.
See, I love it, and I'm like, what? I don't get it at the same time. I'm like writing notes, trying to watch it, trying to do this, and I'm just confused the whole time. But it's like, once you get it, it's just great.
Also, sometimes I'm like, do I actually like this? I'm not sure. It's
is
cool.
this real or is it fantasy?
Yeah, which we will get to in a little bit. Look, I used to watch the show with my wife, and most weeks it was, do I really like this? Am I enjoying this? I will tell you, I don't watch it with my wife anymore because she realized she did not like it, and she'd had enough. And this episode, I said this when we were talking about it before, for people that give up on the show or just don't think they're going to like it, the beginning of this episode is all of the things that you hate about this show, because it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Who are these people? How am I supposed to know what it's like? You just gotta be along for the ride.
Right.
And some people don't want to be along for the ride.
Right.
And the other thing about this show is, it airs at 10 o'clock, Eastern, I guess 9 Central, but for the most part, it's on late, at least to me, that's late. And I have 2 kids, so I would be a little bit tired when it was on. And if you fall asleep for even a second, it's just like I was saying, you have to pay attention to the show. If you miss anything, you're like, well, then I got to watch the whole stupid episode again. And I love this show, but it's that attention to detail that I think you have such a strong connection to it because we were talking. There's things that we weren't even sure had actually been established before on the show. Let's talk about that moment, though, when Switch is given the name Switch. So it's just easy to refer to her as Switch because they didn't really give us her name.
I think they did.
said
They
it
did,
once.
yeah.
But it was-
when she
Yeah.
sits at the table and basically, Skypes or video chats with her dad while they're eating breakfast, and it was like, studies are good? Yeah, studies are good. All right, see you later. And I think we learn a lot about her, which is interesting. She talks about how her dad has a room of robots, and she says that sometimes she stands really still because maybe then I'll be a robot too. So I think we get a lot of insight into her. But maybe some people would see this and let us know in the chat if you were watching this and you're like, I don't care about her. Like, where's David? Like, the way that the season 2 ended, it's like, I want to see that. And I think it's nice to kind of make us earn the reward of seeing where it went after that. But let's talk, Alexa, first about when she finally gets to sit down with Lenny and sort of where things go from there.
Well, I mean, I was wondering actually where Lenny was and how she was helping David, and it was cool to finally see her revealed in this strange cult atmosphere. She seems to be still his right-hand woman in this whole thing, and it was interesting to watch her interact with Switch and how she was kind of like the barrier between Switch finally meeting David. And, it was interesting also seeing how David was putting out into like the universe, like, okay, I need a time traveler, and how he, the little kind of puzzle pieces that he made her jump through to finally find him was interesting to me.
Yeah, it wasn't just he didn't put an ad on Craigslist.
No, you can't.
It was like you
Looking
have
for a
to-
time traveler.
You have to prove that you're very strong of mind. And what I like best about the reveal is when she's listening to the radio, and it's like, if you missed it and you're any good at your ability, just go listen to it again.
Right.
And that's the first time we see her power. Jeff, what do you think about the way that we see Switch use her power, where she sort of like carves a little doorway into time and space?
I thought it was really cool. I felt like her powers evolved, or maybe we saw her powers evolve throughout the episode. Because at first we see her just like sit there, do a little, you can tell the time is changing.
Yeah.
And then eventually through the episode, you see her actually creating a door and then talking about what time travel is, like the different rules of time travel. And that was really cool to see because it kind of established that. There's a lot of other shows and movies that kind of go in the gray area with time travel. This was like made the rules very specific right at the jump.
And I think the visual of when we see her like walking down the hallway, it's like, do you want to go back, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours? And, it's very reminiscent of a device they've done a lot on the show where we have, a narrator kind of telling us about, all sorts of things. And she's like listening to, basically like time travel for dummies. And I think it's great. I mean, all the levels of things we're talking about, how you have to pay attention to this show. There were so many subtitles in this episode. It's like you have to read so much of the dialogue. So when we see David, he's very mellow. He's kind of
super
like,
zen, man.
Yeah, he's very zen. Look, he's a cult leader at this point.
Yeah.
And all he asks, he just wants love. He helps people. He just asks them to stick around.
Yeah, and he's feeding them peace and love through the little oxygen things or whatever whatever you want to call
That
it.
tea, whatever that tea is.
Whatever that tea is, yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I would take it.
No, I don't think so
And
either.
Switch put it down.
Exactly. You see all those people and like, oh, here's tea. Nah, I'm good, dog.
Yeah, it's like, look at everybody. There's just so many interesting characters around. I mean, we really only need to focus on Lenny and David, but there is the pregnant
woman, who's a virgin.
And she asks her, and she has a great line in the episode, which is penis free for 25 years. So and it's just little funny but so weird.
So weird.
That's why this show is so great, and I think that seeing David, it was like one of those. It was like that moment of like, okay, finally, this is what we needed. And I was definitely along for the ride, but it was so weird that when we finally got him, it's like, okay. And also, you know, if I hadn't selected it on a DVR that I know that Legion had been recorded, I think after a few minutes I might have thought I was watching the wrong show, you know, because it was just like, well, you know, this didn't really feel like it. But when we finally get to meet him, we see just how close Farouk and, you know, the whole team really is to finding him. And it's such a graphic series of events, you know.
But you gotta wonder, though. Sorry to
No, go
interrupt,
ahead,
but
please.
like, how much time has elapsed since the end of season 2 to
Right.
now? I mean, clearly he bought this or has this house.
He said he made it, so
Oh, he
you know,
made the house.
he's able to sort of, I think, manufacture things from his mind, you know. So
And is it a real house? Is it, you know, fantasy? That's a whole
We'll get
other
into
thing.
that.
But,
Yep.
Yeah.
you know, how long have they been searching for him? Sid seems to have changed a lot.
she has a stunning new tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
And on the one arm it says, wait, now I'm forgetting.
Me first,
Me
right?
first.
Me and first.
Me first.
So yeah, which I think is important, especially when you have the ability she has. You should remember me first.
Right.
So we get to see Switch in action. Basically, you know, I think what David kills female Carrie at one point, and you know, we see just this assorted mayhem. And when David's arm gets cut off, I think that's when you're like, okay, yeah, so we're going to see her time travel in a second. You know,
Yeah,
because you know,
can't die.
you can't-
Not yet.
That is too early in the season. Or, you know, and it's like, are they going to give him a hook hand? No. So, and
Jamie
that,
Lannister, gold hand.
that was what we were talking about. And she goes back in time, and it's not far enough.
Right.
And we hear her getting the advice. It's like, you don't want to go back too many times because you'll attract the monster, which I think in the context of the episode, it seems like she attracts Farouk, but then there's also the idea that there's something darker to be
Time
found.
demons
Right.
that come in. And
Yeah, because she's warned against the demon, and I believe that is not Farouk. You know, this is something else.
Yeah,
You know?
Farouk just caught her during her time travel because, like, he said he traced her. He said he could feel her powers and stuff and couldn't feel David's anymore. So I think he just caught her through that and put her in the astral plane.
Yeah, and I think that's a great sequence, and it's always a reminder of how great the actor is that they cast Farouk. And anybody who's seen Amal Farouk from the comics, you know, they did an amazing job in finding someone who just looks like that. So as we were watching this unfold, what were some of the questions that started to come up? Was it, you know, Alexa, you mentioned that how much time has passed. What were some of the other things that you maybe didn't feel like we got addressed throughout the course of the episode?
Yeah, how much? I mean, most of the episode was a big question mark to me. I was like, okay, so how much of this is David's mind? How much of this is reality? Who is Switch? Where did she come from? Why is David looking for a time traveler? There's so many questions. This whole episode was one big question, but it seems like, to me, the reason why David wants to go back in time, and he even says this in the episode, was not to repair his relationship with Sid, because I think he realizes that that's moot at this point. Not entirely, but I think the greater question on his end is, who are my parents? Where did I come from? So I think that's what he's going to use it for.
Yeah, and Switch even sounds disappointed when she's like, it's a girl
It's
thing.
a girl, really?
He's like, is
That's
that
the-
close-minded?
And I think he's got the great observation of just, you know, it's not going to work. It's not going to be that the
Right.
problem is bigger. And, you know, there's a lot of theories. Jeff, what do you think he might want a time traveler for? Have you given it much thought?
Yeah, I was about to say, I at first thought it was to see his dad, but then we see that in the trailer.
Right. At some point, he's
yeah.
going to see, we know he's
Yeah.
going to see Professor
Yeah.
X
And
at
then
some point.
I think right now, I think it's evolving because he says at first he wanted to just change the things he did in the past, but then he's like, no, I thought about that first. Now it's changing. So I think it's still evolving, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't know where his mind's at, because I thought it was for trying to change the past, but then also that would change all his events. So I'm not really sure where he's going with that.
Yeah, I mean, when you deal with time travel, there's so many concerns about paradoxes and things like that. Although Avengers Endgame proves that there's one theory, which is just, yeah, you can do whatever you want and everybody's going to be fine. You know, I mean, Nebula can shoot the past version of herself and not die. Which I was just like, well, I really thought that was time travel 101. Don't kill the younger version of yourself. So, again, I don't know. But
You don't know time travel? Come on.
well, we'll talk time travel in a few moments. But I think, if anything, just as a guest, he would want to time travel to the point last season before Farouk is reinserted into his body, because that was the point where if you had killed his body and destroyed his body, then he would still be floating around. Yes, he could still possess people, but he's at his most powerful when he's actually in his body. So none of these things could be right. It'll be really interesting to see what it is that David wants to time travel for.
And that's another thing. If you go back in time and change things in the past, does that mean that everything in the future has changed? And I mean, even with him as David, having all these powers.
Yeah, I mean,
is he going to be aware of his past self?
Right, but as being the one who did the changing, you might actually be the one person who knows the difference.
Right.
You know,
they have to set up the rules here at least a little bit.
Well, yeah, they'll have to give us what the rules are. And one of the things we were talking about beforehand. Alexa, you actually asked, like, can't David time travel? Mm-hmm. And this iteration of David does not seem to be able to time travel himself. And if he can, he doesn't know. I feel like this David still has powers that he doesn't realize.
Right.
I think he's so much further along and more self-assured than he was in season 1. And he's perfectly on display in this episode, just the kind of control he has of his abilities. But I think there's still so much more that he doesn't realize he has. And it's evidenced. The comic book version has thousands of different distinct personalities with different powers.
And he has such great hair.
He has amazing hair, and we're starting to get his hair to stick up a little bit. And I was just like, man, I just want it to be so big. Ryan in the booth, if you could do an image search for David Haller, New Mutants number 25, and do it as an image. You will see, because we want to share with people who maybe don't know what David's hair looks like in the comic book, an amazing...
It's like he stuck his finger in an electrical socket.
Amazing artistic rendition by the artist Bill Sienkiewicz. And I think that, so in the comic books, at one point he travels back in time because he wants to help out his father, so he wants to go back in time and kill Magneto, and accidentally kills his father, Professor Xavier. Whoops. Creates an entire alternate reality that is known as the Age of Apocalypse, which had to then be done. So, yeah, you gotta be careful when you time travel. That's the point. Mm-hmm. So I know that in the comics David is able to time travel, but in any case, so the second part of the episode we kind of flip and we get to see Farouk, who is now letting people know that he's got a time travel. He has that conversation with Sid. And the thing that he was most fascinated about, Jeff, when he talks to Switch, is this idea that she actually saw them find him and succeed in seeing Sid kill him. So he's like, oh my God, so you've seen this? So it's possible, and do you think that in any way ties into him saying that she should stay behind?
Oh, 100%. I wrote that down right when he said that you should stay behind. I knew that was a key moment. So I think he's trying to change the future, or trying to play with it at least, just to change it, because he knows he's dealing with the time traveler. So he has to play by different rules, try different things, and obviously that didn't work. But yeah, so I 100% think that's correlated, and I think that's going to be something throughout the series, trying to find different ways to outsmart a time traveler, and that was just one of them.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a major part of really everything that we see, and we get to see Carrie and Carrie. We get the interesting robot version of autonomy, and. If you're looking on YouTube, either right now or in a moment, you'll get a pretty good side-by-side comparison of David Haller with the just straight up crazy. It's black, but it looks blue. Just his hair just goes straight up, and maybe we'll do an after show where we all go out and we all get David haircuts. So stay tuned.
I'm gonna need some hair for that part.
Well, it's all right. We can get wigs. It's fine.
We are
we
in
get
Hollywood.
extensions.
I feel like
Yeah,
we can make it happen.
We could get somebody there. What were let me, instead of just kind of going through the episode, let me ask each of you. Let me ask you first, Alexa. What are just some of the visuals or just moments that really stand out for you in the course of this? What I guess it was like 50 minutes of television.
Visuals of this. Well, I mean, in terms of disturbing images, what was that pig? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
I know you mentioned, coming from, God, I forget the name of the band. Is it Pink Floyd?
Well, yeah. There's a Pink Floyd connection of just that was something they would have at concerts as a pig floating over the audience.
Interesting.
And Sid's name, Syd Barrett, is of course a member of Pink Floyd. And I'm just like, all right. No, Holly, we get it. You're a fan. But
where did this pig come from? Why is it huge? And why did it start squealing?
It started squealing.
And that was really disturbing for me. I don't know. I never had a reaction to pigs like that before, other than watching Babe a long time ago as a child.
Yes. No, exactly.
And being very disturbed by that film,
well,
but
this is a great transition into our special segment. Is this the real life? Or is this just fantasy? Yes, we're caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. So that is your example, which is the pig. And yes, why is he squealing? What's wrong?
Why is he so huge? And were they worshiping him? I just was focused so much on the pig that I didn't even see the other people in the room that seemed to be probably worshing
Yeah,
him.
in all honesty, if I was in a room and there was a giant pig off to the side,
Bacon.
Well, all right, now you're really talking. And pork belly.
Right.
I mean, really, we could really pork chops. I mean, just think of how delicious that pig would be.
I'm just thinking of where the next restaurant is closest to this place.
What was your example for is this the real life or is this just fantasy?
It is when we see Switch is going through the tunnel, and that is she's going through a corporate building. She's going above the streets of some downtown area. There's so many different places that tunnel's taken her. I didn't know if that was reality or just a illusion that David's making. So that would be my standout moment. Was it reality or was it fantasy?
Yeah, and for me, the case could be made that the majority or all of the first 20 minutes isn't real. Is the house real? Is it an actual, are those people actually there? Is it a physical building as it looks like? The way it disappears at the end of the episode, you feel like it is at least the outside structure is real. But the one moment that I was like, oh, is this real, is when she basically goes into that dry cleaners and she has to answer the series of questions. And when she doesn't have the answer to the pregnant woman's name, was it find the orange fish? And oh my God, it's a salmon.
Salmon, yeah.
So she's smarter than I am because I would have gone home. And
Yeah.
like,
I'll catch you tomorrow.
I mean, it's like, oh man, I've got my time travel powers, but I would not win on Jeopardy. So yeah. So and let us know in the chat whether you're watching live or if you're someone checking out the archive version of the show. What was the moment for you that you were like, wait, is this real? Is this happening? Or this has to definitely be fake? Yes, exactly.
Caught in a landslide.
Yeah, no escape from reality. Thank you. Yeah, and with that being the sound effect for our special segment, you wonder if we should actually do this show driving around in an AMC Pacer like the gang in Wayne's World from the beginning of the movie. We'll just drive around talking about Legion.
Look, I'm down.
I'm just putting it out
so
there.
Down too.
All right. So a couple other things that are very much worth talking about from the course of the episode is we really, this idea that David has a time traveler does not sit well with Clark, who has his own reasons to find David, as we remember, and his partner asked the question, like, why don't we have one, And it's a great question because of the fact that, as strong as, I guess a telepath is the best way to describe Farouk, that's not something he can do, know? And David is so much more powerful than he is. And arguably, he's got more raw ability than, any telepath, whether it be Jean Grey or even Professor Xavier. It's just, I think a lot of them are much more focused than he is, so they're able to hone their abilities better than him.
Well, that, and I believe that he actually does have all the mental illnesses that they talked about. So that gives him a great disadvantage.
Yeah, we had that great episode last season where we saw all the different personalities, and that was actually one of the things I wanted to make sure we didn't skip entirely. When Switch goes back the first time, there's Scottish David talking to regular David.
I saw that.
And the first time she isn't in that room with him.
Yep.
So that lends itself to the theory that what's in there is actually not real because there's two Davids, and that's sort of like a figment of not his imagination, but it's another part of his mind. What do you think that means, Alexa?
What
the fact that we see the other David? Do you think, does that tell you that maybe none of it's reality?
We were discussing David in the comics versus this David in the show, and how his powers are the same but different in the show. How he basically would take over or kill other people, and then they would become part of his personality, and he would see them. I mean, it's so hard to describe his powers in the comics
because he has so many.
I know,
because as time goes on, he ends up with thousands of distinct
voices, but personalities that also have powers at the same time, right?
Yes.
And so
and if one of those personalities isn't dominant, he doesn't have that ability, which I think is the most fascinating thing about the comic book version of the character. This David seems to be able to access any of the abilities that he has. If David in the comics is fighting back and trying to remain dominant, well, it's like, well, then you're not gonna be able to make fire, for example. So.
I thought it was a possibility when I was watching it. I thought it was a possibility of them tapping into the comic version of him and making that become a little bit more of a reality. But that was my take.
Go ahead.
I was going to
say, when I saw it, I thought two different things. That room and just the whole house is always changing because he can change it however he wants, and then also that he's still, I wouldn't say sick, but he still hasn't made his decision on what the real purpose is, because you never know which David is controlling it. So which David has what purpose is each David's reason to do this?
But also, in season 2, at the very end when he was discussing do I deserve love, all that scene where he was in his room, he saw two other Davids there. Neither of them were Scottish, but they were still Davids, and they almost seem like angel and devil versions of himself talking to him. So I don't know where the Scottish part came from. Maybe it was just an added weirdness, because as we know, Noah Hawley likes being weird.
Maybe it's from a reality where David becomes Scrooge McDuck. We don't know. We don't know. It could be anything. It could literally be anything.
It's true.
I could see him swimming around the money bin. It's not directly tied into what we were talking about, but there's a great moment that the show always manages to find a way to inject humor when you don't expect it, and I think that there was a lot in the course of, especially the beginning of the episode. But when Lenny is first talking to Switch.
Oh yeah, that was
and
great.
She, Switch, is that Switch hitter? And she's like, I like boys. And and Lenny just has the great reaction of, why? And I just thought, and Lenny doesn't have that much to do in this episode.
No.
But one, she has an amazing outfit. I hope that we get to see it again. And two, she just gets to be so funny, in the. I don't know. I mean, maybe she has 3 minutes of screen time. I don't even think she does.
I just think it's great. I always thought it was great that her character was originally supposed to be a man. And,
Lenny,
And she, she got cast. Noah just loved her, and so they cast her. And she specifically requested that they don't change really anything about the character. All the male infused things that she would say just are kept there. And I think that that's so cool and so great that she wanted that.
I think she honestly, not only did she steal that scene, obviously it was about her, but that was one of the biggest parts of this episode, just because of how she's funny, and it was out of nowhere, and then what she was wearing is very memorable for the whole episode.
Yeah, one of the things that Farouk asks Switch is, why are you helping him?
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Is
what he asks, what do you want from him? Maybe we can come to an arrangement. So we were just talking a few minutes ago about how we don't know what he wants. We also don't know why she wants to help him. Who knows why she walks into the room? But also, once she sees what happens to him, I think that there's a sense of it's right to help this guy. This army comes in. And
why though? Because I don't really feel like he had too much of a connection with her.
She might just be like you said, just you see someone die, like, oh, maybe I should help him at least figure out why this is happening.
Right.
Give him the chance.
I want him to explain to me why this is happening. So it's interesting you say that, Alexa, because I do think that they connect really well in that moment. It was something that I mentioned earlier. It's sort of that weird scene where he's like, how are you? And she says, okay. How are you? And he keeps asking her, and then finally she says the thing about how my dad collects robots, and I'll go in there and I'll stand and feel like maybe I'm a robot too. So I think in that moment he really does connect with her.
You do?
Yeah.
I just feel like it wasn't enough for me.
Right, but also remember that he is such a powerful mind. Like there's also an empath quality to what he can do. So I think just sort of being in his mind, having that conversation with him, I think it's easy to feel a connection to somebody that you, only spoke to for a couple minutes, and during those minutes you still get murdered.
Also, so you think he's controlling her a
No,
little bit?
I actually don't think it's that. I think just the connection was strong. I don't think he's trying to make her do anything. Although you want to talk about another great line, which is, what about trust? He's like, yeah, I tried that. It's better to just read people's minds. What are we going to say, Jeff?
I was going to say that from the beginning, we know that her father makes robots. So when she dips right out of the, what is it called? The zone?
Astral plane?
Astral plane,
yeah.
When she dips right out of the astral plane, she says, and you're a robot, and just falls back. So maybe that's another thing. It's like, why would I trust you? You're a robot. I know what robots do. And I think that might come into play later in the show, because they're making more robots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what it is. David's a man, and you're a robot. In a moment, we'll take a look at what some of the questions and comments are from the chat. So please keep those coming. And if you're watching the archive, as I said, please make sure to leave your comments, and we'll try and get to them in a future episode. One of the fun things that we were talking about that I thought would be great for a top 3 here, we get to meet Switch. Turns out that she's a time traveler. So I thought each of us, we would create a top 3 of the best time travelers. Jeff, I will let you go first. Who would you say is the best time traveler?
I'm going to go with number 1. I'm going to go with the Flash. Best time traveler.
Okay, now which iteration of the Flash are we talking about?
I'm going Grant Gustin, TV show Flash.
Okay, because movie Flash doesn't really get to do a lot of time traveling.
Yeah.
He time travels into Batman, Superman from a movie that never actually got made. He's supposed to be traveling from Justice League 2. So it's really confusing.
That's what you think, though. In his timeline, it did happen.
Well,
and then
it did. It's just we never got to see it.
Exactly.
So that's fine. All right. And Alexa, our number 2 choice, who of course it's your number 1, but who's the number 2? This is the way the voting works here. Who is the number 2 time traveler?
You gotta come back with me.
Wait a minute. Doc Brown?
No.
Marty! It's your kids, Marty! Yeah.
No, Marty.
So Marty McFly.
Marty is my favorite.
Now, which Marty McFly? In Back to the Future 2, Marty McFly is up in the rafters while Marty McFly is playing on stage.
Gosh,
it's a very meta moment.
It's very meta. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Back to the Future 2. I love how they incorporated the first movie, and he was meddling in it.
What's a lot easier to do now, the fact that they did it in 1989 is really impressive.
Exactly.
They inserted him into the footage. It seems like it's almost like too easy to do now.
I agree.
And then for me, I feel like I wouldn't be a nerd if I didn't give representation to the Doctor, aka Doctor Who. That's not really his/her name, but the Doctor, I think, is the #1 time traveler. It's hard to really debate, but who do you think? I want to give an honorable mention to Bill and Ted, by the way, because they're like my favorite time travelers. Yeah, exactly. And we're getting a new movie with them in it.
Can we say the Avengers are the worst time travelers?
They didn't do a great job the
because
Avengers,
they made rules and then just said
and Cap literally broke all the rules.
And then it's like there's like 5 Caps, one old, one's at the wedding, like.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our thoughts. Let us know who are your favorite time travelers. It is maybe by the end of the season, maybe Switch is going to be one of my favorite time travelers. We don't know, but we can always revisit all that. You know what? And Fandom D Saint actually mentions Bill and Ted. So clearly,
nice.
I was on the right track with them. You should never forget that. Wild Stallions. Come on. So let's see. Oh yeah, Phantom Dean Saint also has a great quote that I actually forgot. Shadow King mentions that he met a time traveler before, Geraldine, and I wonder, are all women time travelers?
I know, I was offended.
But that's such a fascinating observation, because I mean, all time travelers are not women.
Yeah.
Although my example of Doctor Who it's a woman now, so maybe Farouk's onto something. And then in the booth, we get an honorable mention from Ryan, Bruce Willis and Looper, which I thought was actually a great
who's
movie.
Also technically Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yes.
As well.
And also Bruce Willis is also a time traveler in 12 Monkeys, the movie version. So maybe Bruce Willis is a real time traveler.
Maybe.
Just something to look into. I'm just putting it out there. I don't have the answers.
Look, if The Simpsons made it, then it's facts. So if they didn't do it, then it's not facts.
Yes, exactly. So first of all, we have a very, very active chat right now, and we appreciate everybody in there. So please make sure that you're back next week for episode 2, and our 4th co-host will be here, Alana Jordan, but I actually won't be here. I'll be on vacation with my family, but I'll be back after that. I'll be back every week, basically, except for episode 2. But this is great to talk to. It was great to get to know both of you and the audience as well. Yeah. So this was a real experience to watch that episode together.
Totally.
And this is a lot of fun to talk about it. But until next week, Alexa, where do people find you?
Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at Alexa Cappy. Cappy.
Right. I didn't mean where do they literally find you, and then online. So I'm glad you realized. Yeah. We didn't want your zip code. Where do people find you?
So not Santa Monica. I shouldn't say that.
You can say that. I don't think anybody's gonna. Hey, is he here? Where is he?
You never. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you guys can find me at All That After Show, Euphoria After Show, Legion After Show, and then Swamp Things. I'm doing all the after shows. And if you want to find me on social media, at JeffWill_Jr.
At JeffWill_Jr. Well, at least you kept it simple. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And if you're here, you probably like Marvel. Well, good, because I'm probably your guy. Sundays at 9 Pacific, Marvel TV Weekly. Thursdays at 1 Pacific over on the Popcorn Talk Network, Marvel Movie News. And the Jessica Jones After Show. We'll be winding that down on Thursday and Friday this week. And sometimes, like this week, I was a guest on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. After Show. So look for me. You'll find me. And again, we appreciate everybody who was in the chat. We will see you next week. Have a good one, everyone.
See you later.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.